Here we go, back at the sander. Again, you just lay the piece down on the sander with the machine off. You take your thumb, hold it down, and your first or second finger, usually my first finger, and you put it on the back side so it doesn't shoot out the back of the sander. And you just want to quick turn it off and on and off real quick. Just do it a little bit at a time so it doesn't get away from you. And you want to make sure it stops before you try and pick it up again. And you can see it's nice and flat. And again, you want to, whoops, see, I'm always dropping and losing these things. You want to try and make them all the same thickness. It's not totally critical at this point of the game, because you can always fine tune it as you start fitting them together, but you want to try and get them close now, so it's going to make it easier later on. And again, it's just a matter of going through them one at a time, real quick. And again, I tend to keep flipping them so I know which ones I've done and which ones need to be done yet. So when I'm done with them, I turn them right side up again so I know they're done. And this will take me about another 10-15 minutes to finish this part. And again, I won't bore you with all the details, so I'll just go ahead and finish those up. And when we're done, we're ready to start making the final fits, final cuts, and assembling our stars. So I'll be back in a minute and show you the next step. Well, we got one more set of cuts to make before we can start assembling the star. And for that I use this jig here. And as you can see here, I got the layout pattern. And you start with 90 degrees angles. Then you want to put two more in at 22.5. And those would be the actual points of the stars. Now the dotted line in between, that's going to be our cut line. And that's basically 11.25 degrees off from your first line. Then again, they're 22.5 degrees apart, so it's like a bunch of squares. So you have your first lines as the points, and the second dotted lines is the way I'm going to cut on a saw. And this is just so I can lay them out so the pieces are all properly positioned without being, you know, at irregular angles. Over on this side is my cutting jig. It's basically a smaller version of the other side, so I cut one at a time. And you can see it's got a V shape under the stop blocks. And again, the solid line is where the points are going to be, and the dotted lines are the cuts. So you take your piece, your angle piece, and you stick it in the crack. And one thing you want to do with this jig is so it doesn't be bouncing around is you want to screw it down to the table. Again, I often use this regular old plywood top on my benches so I can screw things down to them and make them secure. Again, nothing fancy, just functional. That's one of my mottos. Okay, so this is kind of a by eye process. You want to make sure you hold your finger on your piece and hold it down and back into the jig. And you want to line up your saw looking straight down over the piece and make sure it's fairly perpendicular to the table instead of being like this. You want it to be pretty straight. And you just kind of eye past your saw blade onto your dotted line. And sometimes it helps to put your fingers right up against the blade. I'm sure like this, kind of right up against the blade. That kind of steadies it. So here we go. Steady it up and just kind of start making your cuts. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just make the cut but not go all the way through. And do the other side. Like so. And that That gives me the angle I need. And then I can clean it up with my snips instead of trying to mess around with the saw all the way through. And just cut that other piece off. You end up with a piece that looks like that. See it there, okay? And again, you gotta do that for every piece. And as you go, you just add them up. So again, it's just a matter of repetition here. Just kind of go through them one at a time. You can't be in a rush. You gotta take your time. Just do it right instead of doing it fast. Like I said again, I just make those first cuts a little bit, then finish it off with my snippers here. And for these smaller pieces, I mean, the pieces get smaller and smaller. You gotta keep that jig clean, keep the dust out of it. You know, some of these you're just gonna have to kind of figure out as you go along how the best way for you. I mean, there's many ways to do things. There are people who are doing them sometimes, so you just gotta figure out what works for you, what kind of tools and setup that you have to do with. So you figure out what works best for you. Now it does leave a rough edge here where you cut it, but that will be taken care of on the next step. So again, I got about another 37, 38 of these to go through, so it'll take me a few minutes to get them done. So I'll go through and cut these, and then we'll start doing the assembly. Now the way you determine the overall size of these stars are going to be, you have to measure where they're going to go. And in this particular application, I have a 2-inch circle they're going to fit in the middle of. It's a 2-inch circle on my piece, which I'll show you later. So which means if you see these points I made, they're going to be opposite like that, so that it can't be over 2 inches from here to here. So half the piece would be 1 inch, and just to give it a little bit of room so it ain't tight, I make these pieces 7/8 of an inch, and that's how I get that. I measure from the center of this intersection to the tip of this point, and then make that with the 7/8 of an inch. And then when you put these pieces into the jig, it automatically sets it up so when you finish cutting at the intersection, it'll give you a piece that will be 7/8 in length, and that's how you determine the overall dimensions of these pieces. Well, I've got a few more to cut here, like about 3/4 of them at least. So we'll be back after I finish cutting these. Okay, this is where the fun starts. You can see I got my 8 pieces for 1 star here, and you can see how small they are. I put my finger next to it. This is where the fun starts. This is where you're working with tiny pieces. And I've actually taken a piece of wax paper and I've taped it to my layout pattern, so when I glue them I won't have to worry about them sticking to the board. But just like on all my cuts, any cut with that saw, it leaves a ridge there, and they're not quite lined up right. They're not quite exactly what they need to be. So if you put 2 of them together, you can see this point is off a couple degrees, and there's a little bit of a gap in the middle there. So it's going to require some sanding to fine-tune these pieces, put them all together again. So here we're gonna go with the sander, and I'll show you how I straighten those out and get them so they're lined up properly. Okay, I got the sander and my layout pattern close by, so I can get them both in the same shot. And it's just a matter of fine-tuning these cut edges a little bit at a time. Remember, if you cut too much, you're going to throw it away. So if you just want to do a little bit at a time and fine-tune it and bring it down slowly to what you need. I hope you can see what I'm doing here. I'm just taking off that rough edge slowly. Making these faces so they'll be more precise and easier to glue up. And when you put it together, you can see, I don't know if you can see that or not, maybe I'll bring it closer so you can see now what I've done here. You can see how the point of this one is right on the line, and the same of this one. But now you also want to look at your cut lines and make sure your next piece is lined up with that next cut line here, so your next piece fits also. So we take our next piece. Again, you want to clean up that face. Adjust the angle. And then what I usually want to do, so that you don't have to try and fit all these pieces together with one moving against the other one, I'll take it and I'll glue it up. And I'll glue them right in place. So you take that piece here and you line it up. And let me get close so you can see it. See what I'm doing here. Oh, I guess you can't see it. Let me move some of this stuff out of my way. Get a little closer for you. Now you can see this. You take your cyan or acrylic glue and you get your first piece where you want it, pretty close, and you just lay a little bead right on the paper and on the next stick. Bring your next one into it tight. And try and hold it with both fingers at the same time. And just squirt a little accelerator in there. That actually will set up. Oops, I moved too fast. You want it to set to the paper so you can work on it. The next piece. So there you go. Now that's set to the paper, and the reason for you wax paper is so you can get it off when you're said and done. And you want to take your next piece, slide it in there, and you want to look at the point right here. Let me get a better pointer so you can see better. So now you can see that this point is, again, it's right on the line for the 90-degree line. And looking at my face, it's off my cut line by about just a little bit, maybe a 1/16. So, and there's a little bit of a gap between them. So I can take this piece and just do a little bit more fine tuning on it, so it comes right in right where I want it. And again, it doesn't take a lot, just a very little bit. And put it in there and check it out. And that needs a little bit more. And we're there. That looks like it's supposed to. Now again, you just pull it apart, slap a little bit of glue in the middle there, push it together, hold it, and give it a quick little shot. Presto. And again, usually what I'll do is I'll do a half at a time. And back up a little bit so you can get back to the overall picture here, how I adjust these. Okay, put that down and check it out. And this one here, boy, it looks pretty good just the way it is, actually. Maybe a little bit too long. Just a tiny bit, so I wouldn't turn on the sander. I'll just give a little swipe like that. And that'll take it down to right where I want it. Whoops. Well, you know what? It does need to be adjusted just a little bit. So, take it to the sander. Just take it down. Put it back in place, and that looks good. And pull it apart, put a little bit of glue in there, squeeze it together, quick little shot of accelerator, and we're good. Now I think I'm going to try and just keep on going right around. As long as you line up your pieces with your, well, this one here is a little short, little too thin. So I'm not going to use that piece on this one. So that's why I always make extras. Oh, that one's no good either. But I got more. Now that one's perfect. Slide it right in there. And then actually, that's off somewhat, so we gotta dial it down. Pieces are small, hard to hold on sometimes. Again, that's pretty good. A little bit of glue, a little bit of pressure, a little squirt. Bing, bang, boom. Let me grab a couple more pieces. Those ones that weren't quite right. And I'll make sure I have enough to finish this piece out. And next piece goes in there. That one's a little too thick, so I can sand it down just a little bit. So it's the same thickness. That looks good. Now I want to clean up these edges, these faces rather. Do a little test fit, a little bit off. Go back and take a little more off. Can't stress enough the importance of just doing a little bit at a time. Okay, that looks pretty good. Zap a gap. A little pressure, a little glue, accelerator rather. Let's see, my points are all staying pretty well lined up. Stamp this face. Points off just a little bit, so I want to adjust my angle. Can't tell you how many times I've dropped these little pieces and got so many little pieces from scrap on the floor that they drop and they bounce and they just disappear and you never find them again. That's why it's important to always cut some extras so you don't ever run out of what you need and have to go back and start over again. Okay. That looks good. Now before I go do that piece in, I always like to try and get the last piece fitted to make sure I don't have to do much more of adjusting. And this piece here needs a little bit of work. We'll start by cleaning up the face. The faces of the cuts. Slide it into the space. And I can see I need a little bit more adjusting. It's pretty close. Not quite right. Now, I want you to take a nice close look at that, because well, here we are at my piece, and I'll give you a better look at this in a minute. But as you see, I got this really fancy intricate design out of split twigs, and in the center I got a circle, and that's the home for this star we just built. And what you do is you just basically center it the way you want it in that space, and you want to kind of make it symmetrical and centered. Then take my little pin nailer, and I just start nailing it on. This is a great little nailer. It shoots these tiny little pins, they're called. This is one of the cartridges you put in it, and there's probably about 100 nails on this little strip. And you see it's no bigger than the size of my palm of my hand. And they're so tiny that they don't even leave holes for you to see, so you can really do a good job and not split them. But you want to make sure you put at least one pin into each piece so it stays there and doesn't come off, doesn't fall off, get knocked off. And I can't say that I ever have a problem with this, because I do quality work and nothing ever comes back. I make it right the first time, spend the time and the effort to do it right. Even if it takes me a couple extra minutes or an hour or whatever it takes, days or weeks, a piece like this, I spend probably 5 or maybe 600 hours making this piece. So what's a couple extra minutes to make it right? And there you have a piece on there, what it looks like. It makes a great little finishing piece for this. So let me go get the camera, and I'll just kind of walk you around this piece, and I'll give you an overall view of what this piece looks like. Ain't that beautiful? There's one completed 8-pointed star. Right with my cabinet. Walk around to the front. Like I said, this is the cabinet that I've spent the last 2 months building. It's a Sheridan style sideboard. A rounded front. All the white brown is reversed birch bark, reverse white birch bark. And of course, you know what the twigs are. We've been working with that on this video. Here's a double diamond, which is basically what we use for the 8-pointed star, but we just use the tips. And the tips here, same thing. We just make them cuts differently. Of course, this is a drawer. Cabinet doors. I make these unique pendant pulls using a forked deer antler. Pretty cool. They just kind of hanging there, swinging the breeze, and you just grab them, pop them open, pull it shut. And again, this is a example of what we do here in the shop of the added round deck woodwright. I've been making these pieces for a number of years. My works appeared in 4 or 5 books. I don't know how many articles in magazines, probably 15, 20. I have won numerous awards for my work. Taking the time to do it right, being unique, having your own style, pays off in the end. You know, and these pieces are well worth the effort. I have a great client base who really appreciates them. And I love doing this. Well, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly liked having you here in my shop today, letting you see a little bit about what I do and how I do it. And I take, like I said before, I take great pride in my work. I spend a lot of time developing my unique style, and I hope these little pointers will help you in your endeavors to create your own unique style. And just remember, a little bit of time, a little bit of patience, you can do this too. Just remember, working in the shop, always be safe. Thanks for coming, and we'll see you next time.